Hi, welcome to Onward Shifts podcast. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone that tunes in weekly. I really appreciate the support and thank you for being there for us. I hope you've taken something away from each of the podcasts. And also, I want to take this opportunity to welcome newcomers aboard. And I genuinely hope everyone takes something positive away from this podcast and it helps in many ways. I truly hope that. Um, I want to quickly introduce Onward Shift because we're not just a podcasting platform. We also have 6 different divisions in coaching from ADHD, business, career, life, relationships, and nutrition. We also have 12 accountability groups. We have this weekly podcast, soon to have guests on board as well. And we also have weekly events, walk and talks in Colchester, in Essex. We have a couple of products on our website, and we also have blogs for a bit of bedtime reading. So if you are interested in any of these services, then please check us out at onwardshift.com. And yeah, we'll be happy to provide any services anyone needs. Also, I would like to say feedback for us is a massive part of growing, learning, and developing. So, if you do have any feedback on this podcast or on any of the other services we offer, then please do email us at journey@onwardshift.com. Now, let's get into today's podcast, which will be about constructive criticism. I hate constructive criticism. Well, let me correct myself. I hate the negative constructive criticism. The ones where there's a lot of blaming and there's no ownership from the person who's giving the criticism, especially if that's a manager or, someone else. I really don't like it. It feels unnecessary. Now, there are pros to constructive criticism, and we're definitely going to talk about them because they are healthy and they're really, really needed for everyone to grow and support one another. But a few things that always come out of negative experiences with constructive criticism is the negative impact it has on that person. Whoever's receiving that really bad constructive criticism, it could be something cultural where that person may not understand exactly what's being asked of them. They may say words differently, they may express emotions differently. Now, that negative emotional impact it has on that individual, it could be very damaging for that person. So we've always got to be conscientious of the criticism that we do give. It has to be that there's a key word in that, and that's constructive. It should be constructive. There's other things like I don't know about you, but I've personally been in a position where I've had like really bad constructive criticism and it's completely thrown me. Like what I was very motivated to do, I now have no motivation to complete because one, I've been, I guess, hurt by the criticism. Two, I don't feel passionate about completing that because the criticism I received was very, very aggressive and that was unnecessary. And three, I just think that when you receive criticism, it should be allowed. It should allow you to grow and it should allow you to, uh, I guess, take something away from that and learn. Now, if you give really bad constructive criticism, I know from personal experience it can massively reduce your motivation. And also, don't you find when you receive bad criticism, I say bad criticism because that is what it is, it's not constructive in any way, shape, or form. But when you receive it, it's so time consuming because now not only do you have to pick yourself up, you have to find that morale to get this job completed. You also most probably feel managed or micromanaged to the extent where, again, it's probably had an emotional impact on you and you've reduced your motivation. Now, all of these things will just mean that this job will not get done, one, to its best ability, two, in the most timely manner, and three, it'll probably ruin a relationship between whoever the two are or the number of people are receiving that feedback to the person giving the feedback. Now, they're the negatives of criticism. But there is a massive thing here where we also need constructive criticism for so many things in life. We need constructive criticism in our relationships because we want them to grow, we want them to flourish, and we have to learn from the things that we're not good at to get better at. We also need it at work. We need to be criticized constructively to grow, to be a part of the team, so that everyone in the team can, I guess, bounce off each other and support each other, and not be scared to share their ideas. There needs to be that openness, and that can come from constructive criticism. Some of the positives for me is it allows for growth. It allows for that individual, that team, that couple, that friendship. It allows it to grow, because I've said this before, but you have to be comfortably uncomfortable to grow. I've said this in a number of my podcasts, and what I mean by that is sometimes you have to have difficult conversations, but not those that belittle or degrade you, but those that allow you to grow. So if you are ever in a position where you're conscientious of how to take criticism, remember to walk into it with an open mind. Now, if it's going to be, rude and abusive, then there's no place for that. You need to just cut that off and even walk away, because nobody deserves to be immersed in that particular space. In fact, I can give you an example of once when I was considerably younger, I received really bad criticism, and I was working on a massive building site. I think it was we were building student accommodation. This was when I was an electrician, and a manager came over to me, and I think I did something wrong. I think what I did was I missed a measurement by, it was a very, very small amount, but I installed what you call containment, and it was supposed to be somewhere, and I installed it. I think it was about 10 centimeters out, so that's like, I don't know, 2/3 of a small ruler. So it wasn't much, but and funnily enough, it didn't even impact the job that much, because everyone could just work around it. So it wasn't the end of the world. But I remember the criticism I got. It was this manager called Pat. He come right up into my face. He went bright red, screaming at me. He went absolutely ballistic. He really went absolutely mental. And I think I was only must have been early/mid-20s. And that's when I realized how important it is when you give criticism not to be Pat, because Pat was something which I'm not going to say on this podcast, but you can guess the word that I was going to say. It was horrible. Being in those shoes, you realize you never want to put someone else in those shoes. So it's important to realize that the emotional effect that it had on me personally was to the extent that I picked up my tools and I walked off the job. Fortunately, construction's booming, and I found another job very, very easily. But I highly doubt that guy would ever change. And that, honestly, there's no place for people like that in any environment. It's just not necessary. Now, that's a negative experience, but a positive experience of constructive criticism was also when I was, a fair few years ago, and I was overwhelmed. I was completely overwhelmed. Every day I went into work, my list of jobs just grew and grew and grew. And my manager came up to me, and she was honestly incredible. Her name was Andrea, and she was just phenomenal. She sat me down. She didn't criticize me. She didn't belittle me. She didn't degrade me. She didn't do anything negative. She sat down and asked me what the issues were. And we went through the issues. And she gave me some really good constructive criticism. She taught me about prioritizing my workload, from easy tasks to medium tasks to hard tasks. She taught me something that I think I speak about quite regularly now, and that's the to-do list will never end. And that's a good thing, because that means you've consistently got work. And that's brilliant. You want that, right? Because you never want to be out of work, because bills to pay and all the rest of it. So bearing in mind that you're always going to have work to do and to prioritize your workload. And there was one bit of criticism, constructive criticism she gave me, which completely changed my mindset. I think ever since that day. And this was, God, probably, I don't even know, over 5 years ago. And she said, just smile, just be happy. And honestly, so even now, as I'm saying, I'm smiling because the way she said it was so true. It got to the stage where I was getting overwhelmed with work, and it was just like, God, like I don't want to be here. It was just so hard. And when I first started the job, I had this smile, I had this, energy. It was just amazing. I was full of energy. And as the time went on, the to-do list got longer. I think everyone could see that the smile was fading and it started to become overwhelming. But she just reminded me, just smile, be happy. Now, for me, the positives for that was I grew. I managed to complete all tasks. That was probably the longest job I was in for a number of years. I in my head, it felt as if the world was coming to an end. It was like, oh my God, I'm consistently overwhelmed. I'm working, taking work home every day and all the rest of it. But from my manager's perspective, I was doing a really good job. And sometimes you get stuck, don't you, in that cycle of, oh my God, am I doing enough? I'm doing too much? And now that I've done this amount, it's expected of me to continue there at that pace and all the rest of it. With this manager's constructive criticism, it made me realize that I can prioritize my workload. I can come in with a smile. I can just relax a bit and enjoy my day. And taking that constructive criticism on board, it massively, massively changed my day-to-day attitude of work, and I really started enjoying my job again. And also with that, with my first criticism from Pat, it was, I lost that I lost the mojo, and I just hated it. But with Andrea's criticism, it actually stopped me making small errors and big errors. It made me realize that I can take a step back and reevaluate situations, and there's this pressure that I thought that was on me wasn't on me. And there's three things there. It helped me grow, it added perspective, and as well as that, it helped me prevent making errors. So you can see the difference there between good good constructive criticism and bad. The good will allow that person to grow, it will allow that person to flourish in your environment and become a real team member. Bad criticism, bad constructive criticism, it will do the complete opposite, absolute opposite. And it's so important to remember that. So, something that I have personally taken on board, because I have given bad criticism to people, and lessons that I've learned from that to make my criticism go to constructive criticism have been one, to be purposeful, to tell people what I'm talking about and be very, very, very purposeful in that. So, meaning, for example, the reasons why I want something done a certain way wouldn't be because I've got, I don't know, an ego about that way it should be done. But it's the fact that if you do it this way, it will help with the next project or the next thing to do. So you're starting to get like a method in place. So it's the purpose there is you do certain things one way, and it will help you grow and, I guess, get a momentum to keep continuing that job. Now, don't get me wrong. There's always that old saying of just because you've done it once doesn't mean you've done it right. You know, but in most cases, with experience, I do feel you should be listened to. Not all the time, but most of the time. If someone's got 20 plus years experience than you do, they're probably going to be onto something. Now, the second thing is when you're giving constructive criticism, to be specific. So, for example, if you want something done, let's say I want this light fitting installed, or let's say I want 4 spotlights installed in a ceiling. I'd be quite specific giving the instructions on that. I'd explain how to do the job. First things first, put dust sheets down. Last thing is hoover up, clean up, make sure you fill any holes, make sure it all works, make sure you're marking everything out. And if there's a joist in the way, then don't just move that one spotlight, move all 4 so that it all looks equal to the room. So be very specific in the instructions you're giving so that person hasn't got room for error. Another thing is to be available. So you've given this constructive criticism. You now want to be available. So if that person has any questions, then they can come to you and say, okay, by the way, I need help. I need guidance. I didn't quite get this thing. That's cool. No problems. I would much rather have someone speak to me about it than make an error and we have to go back on it and rectify the whole thing. It's so important to keep that openness of communication there, readily available. Another thing is, I think you should follow up. So let's say, for example, I gave this person an instruction of, you know, to install these 4 spotlights. Now I've given the instruction. Now it's really important is to have that responsibility on myself to go back to that individual maybe a few hours later and go, how you doing? Everything going all right? And give that person the opportunity to go, actually, I've been really scratching my head about this. Can you give me a hand? And then you're there, you're ready to help. You're following up with the constructive criticism you've given, the instructions you've given, or whatever it is, and it can be beneficial to the relationship. I think maybe using installing spotlights might not be a great analogy for this, but the reason I used that was because I've been in that situation before with my previous company, or if I did ask someone to install spotlights, it's something that they didn't do properly the first time. And the second time I gave them feedback on how to do it with clearer instructions, etc., etc. And the second time they did it, it was an absolutely blinding job. I couldn't have done it better myself. So I was really brings me on to my final point of what constructive feedback should be. After you follow up and they've done what they've been asked to do to that exceptional level, praise. Praise is so important because people need to hear praise. I do as well, like everyone does. So pat on the back it goes a long way. And I think it's important that when you give constructive feedback, that you do follow it up and you do give that individual a pat on the back and go, you've done an absolutely smashing job here. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And keep that morale and keep that momentum going for that individual. Because now they're becoming part of the team. They're about becoming, this could even be in your relationship. For example, my girlfriend's given me constructive criticism before on the way I handle things. But she's never just got, he's done it, well, hey, we've won the battle. It's always been like, how are you with that? Are you comfortable doing that? It's keeping that open communication about it. I don't see my girlfriend as my manager in any way, shape, or form. She's my other half, and we both have to give each other that constructive criticism to grow and to develop and to help understand each other. Now that's so important. So just want to end by giving a bit of homework because I think homework's always a bit of fun. Next time you're thinking about evaluating someone or giving someone constructive criticism, remember to put yourself in their shoes. Remember to go, okay, I've been in their position once, and my manager spoke to me like this, or my partner spoke to me like this, or my friend spoke to me like this, and I didn't like it. And remember not to be that person. Be open, be mindful, and be a human at the end of the day. So be that person that people want to come to, and be that person you want to be so comfortable around that you can ask them, I want constructive criticism. So the homework is to put yourself in the person's shoes you're about to give constructive criticism to, and remember they're only human and everyone makes mistakes, but it's the feedback you give that person that will help grow both of you. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I hope you've taken something away from it. And thank you so much for making it to the end of it. We'll be having another podcast next week, Wednesday, like we have done for many weeks now. And I just want to say, thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you have an amazing week ahead.